So good morning and welcome everybody to the shared webinar by the projects 3Co and BioReCer, both supported by the European Union. And I would like to present BioReCer first. BioReCer is a project also handling certification. That's why we are here today. The goals of the projects is assessment and complementing of current certification schemes for biological waste feedstock. And in this project, a digital support tool based on artificial intelligence and machine learning is developed to enhance tracking and traceability of the feedstock through the value chains. This project also has the BioReCer stakeholder platform because it is deeply based on stakeholder involvement. So if you are interested to becoming a member of this group, you can scan the QR code here. Also, there will be an annual stakeholder event in this month already on the 27th of November. It is titled Advancing Bio-Based Product Certification, a Collaborative Path Towards Sustainability. So if you want to participate, we will share the link for registration in the chat. The second project is 3Co, Concise Consumer Communication. That's why it's 3Co, through robust labels for bio-based systems. This project aims at influencing consumer behavior through smart digital solutions, and it will also develop guidelines for labeling and certification scheme holders, in this case on the B2B side, B2 business to consumer side. And if you're interested, you can subscribe to our newsletter also by scanning the QR code. With this, I would like to present the two speakers of today. On the one side, we would like to welcome Dr. Simon Schwarzwald. He is a sustainability expert at RedCert GmbH, where he has been working since 2022. He holds a PhD in chemistry from the University of Bonn and focuses on the RedCert system for the chemical industry and contributes to RedCert EU for biofuels and renewable fuels of non-biological origin. In addition to his work advocacy for biomass utilization, Simon advocates for a stronger emphasis on recycled materials, including inorganic solutions, to promote circular economy practices within the chemical sector. I would like also to welcome Philippe de Wolfs. With an engineering and computer science background, Philippe has always worked in the field of conformity assessment. In the road and the rail sector at the beginning of his career, then since the end of the 1990s in the field of certification of bioplastics. He currently leads the Bioplastic Certification Department at TÜV Austria, which acquired this activity from Vansot at the end of 2017. TÜV Austria is a leading certification organization with more than 6,000 active certificates in this field. Philippe is a member of several national and international working and standardization groups and is regularly consulted to share his experience. Before we actually start with the webinar, I would also like to announce that there will be a second webinar in this series, which is called Labels and Certification for Bio-Based Products, Counteracting Greenwashing and Increasing Consumer Trust, which will take place on the 13th of December. If you would like to register for this event too, we will also share the links in the chat. For today, we have some housekeeping rules. So we will not allow for questions during the presentations. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. And you can only ask questions via the Q&A box. Please do not put them in the chat. And also, please refer to each speaker by adding an @ and the speaker's name. Obviously, it is possible to state a question verbally. Sorry for that. So you can also raise your hand and we will unmute you. And all materials of today's session and the recording will be made available on the project websites. For further questions, you can also come back to Dušica or me. And with this, I would like to hand over the word to Simon. Please start your presentation.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for organization and thank you for nice introduction. I'm about to share my screen. You should be able to see it just about now.
Yes,
sorry. Yeah, there's quite a lot of different screens and windows. Okay, so I think now you can all see it, right? Okay, first of all, once again, thank you for having us here. Yeah, I think this is a very interesting topic, sustainability certification. RedCert has been playing a role in sustainability certification for nearly 14 years now. We are a non-profit organization supported by the shareholders you can see here on the right-hand side. And we at RedCert, we are mostly known for the certification in the biofuel sector since 2010 as a national certification scheme, 2012 with official European recognition. And then in later years, 2015 and 18, we extended our scopes to the food and feed and the chemical industry as well under the RedCert 2 flag, which is independent from the biofuel certification. Our scheme for the renewable fuels is based on European legislation, the Renewable Energy Directive, RED or RED 2, and has been, as I mentioned, directly recognized by the European Commission. Whereas then on the right-hand side, our RedCert 2 scheme is independent. It is extending the same concepts to additional industrial sectors under the RedCert 2 brand. And by doing this, we're going beyond legal requirements, which means that there is no official pathway for recognition. And whatever a company is interested in joining the scheme will be doing this purely on a voluntary basis. But nevertheless, I think this is a great way to be active before the sector is legally required to do so and be part of a moving industry. Of course, I cannot go into detail on our technical requirements today, but a very important point for us is to make clear that certification is mostly about transparency and of course also about sustainability in this case. All of our scheme documents are available online. You can publicly access everything, including checklists for audits. So anyone who's interested can find out at any time without any obligation what exactly will be required by the certification and what would be asked in a potential audit. And then at the same time, of course, we protect data of our scheme participants. So an audit report of a specific company would not be published. So companies are voluntarily following our requirements, and who's taking part in it. As you can see here, there's a list of certified scheme participants from the chemical industry. You see there's a great mixture of both extremely large companies such as BASF, Henkel, Shell, Evonik, Wacker, and so on, but also a good amount of medium-sized or even smaller companies on the other hand. And by judging from the logos, you can probably already guessed that it's not only about biomass, but also about other renewable materials such as recycled materials today. But of course, our main focus, not only historically, but also for today, is lying on sustainable biomass. Our certification system covers the overall chain of custody. That means we are starting on the very left side with the production of the renewable materials, and then follow the overall chain up to the finished consumer product on the right-hand side. And in terms of raw materials, our main focus, as I mentioned, is relying on the cultivated biomass, but also on recycled materials, and then in addition, in latest days, also on additional sustainable materials, such as, for example, electrolysis using green electricity. The so-called RF and BOs are, of course, also a big player, future player in the renewable fuel sector. And all of those materials that are certified in different sectors can be used in the chemical industry as well. The overall idea of a chain of custody certification is to individually certify the specific companies. That means that every company that is resembling a chain link in our system is to be assessed and audited and certified individually. That sounds like a lot initially, but then on the other hand, this means that the certificate can then be used as a so-called proof of sustainability that a consumer can then rely on. The certification creates a level of trust and ensures that downstream companies do not have to individually themselves reassess their overall supply chain, but instead can rely on the certification that has been done by a neutral certification body. At the same time, however, it is then of course important that every single company within this chain of companies is certified, because if one company in between, one chain link, is not certified, the chain breaks and then information are lost and sustainability declaration is not possible anymore. Yeah, what you can see on the very left side here in marked in green is that we are also partnering with other certification schemes. In this space specifically important because in our certification scheme for the chemical industry, we are not also certifying farming industries, farmers, very small waste manufacturing or waste producing companies. Those are then assessed by additional certification schemes, such as, for example, our BioReCer EU scheme for the fuel industry. And now here, as you can see, a larger list. You all know that there are so many different certification schemes already existing in this world. And we at RedCert, we believe that it is extremely important to try to harmonize and combine those certification schemes. So we at RedCert, we actively approach equivalent systems, equivalent schemes, in order to recognize them, of course, hopefully on a mutual basis. In this way, we try to avoid expensive, costly double certification, especially for smaller companies, which then would otherwise cause difficulties when serving different customers. So we want to avoid, especially smaller companies, to hold multiple certificates just in order to be able to sell to different customers. At the same time, that then of course also means that our scheme participants can choose materials, certified sustainable materials from a larger variety of suppliers. Taking a look at the table, very first line, RED II voluntary schemes. This refers to all certification schemes that are accepted by the European Commissions, especially for the renewable fuel sector. Then, of course, we have ICC Plus and RSB, which are two other leading certification schemes in the chemical industry. Then SII benchmarked. This is the Sustainable Agriculture Initiative it's a larger platform, sustainability platform from the food and feed sector that is mostly dealing with smaller operations. And then also, of course, we have FSC, PFC, I think are well known. as well as the mechanically recycling schemes EOZ+ and Recyclas, which are also very active and very widely recognized in the European Union. So I mentioned the chain of custody, but chain of custody always comes with chain of custody models. And as you can see here, there are the 4 most prominent options. And out of those 4 different options, we allow for 3 of them. Starting on the very right side, you can see segregation, which is a system where sustainable and conventional fossil non-sustainable materials are strictly separated, physically separated. So any product that comes from a segregated value chain physically consists out of the sustainable input material. Then one to the left, we have the controlled blending system, where sustainable and conventional materials are physically mixed, but always in a known proportion. And that means that the same physically present sustainable share is then present in every single item that comes out of the manufacturing process. And then here, one step left, we have mass balancing, where sustainable and conventional materials are co-processed in an existing infrastructure, and a sustainable share is then later attributed by a balance sheet to certain products, certain fractions. However, there is no physical proof for a specific item having that specific sustainable share. And then on the left side, not allowed within our scheme, book and claim methods. Those are excluded. And book and claim, for example, refers to models where you buy carbon certificates to offset emissions, or where you buy sustainability certificates for certain materials that are not physically used on your site. So those methods are excluded from our certification. I'd like to basically jump over this slide really quickly because of time. However, mass balancing, and you will receive the slides later, is an important part of the chemical industry. If you have any questions, please address them later. But here, just very quickly, mass balancing means that sustainable and non-sustainable material taken into the same operation where they are mixed, and then later they are on a balance sheet attributed, the sustainable shares attributed to specific products. So what exactly is to be communicated? We at RedCert, we typically refer to the so-called substitution degree, which is here on top. Substitution degree refers to the amount of fossil material that was substituted by sustainable alternatives. That means that non-organic materials, such as, for example, water or metals or different kinds of salts, inorganic salts, are excluded from the overall calculation. And then in contrast, below we have biogenic content and recycled content. And here we typically refer to the overall proportion of the total weight of a product. That means including inorganic matter. And I think all of those 3 different certification approaches have their value, and it's mostly important to communicate precisely. So whereas our certification scheme, the sustainable share, the substitution degree, refers to the percentage of fossil material that was saved, biogenic content and recycled content refer to the physical proportion, the weight percentage of sustainable material that is present in a specific product. And then, of course, there can also be different sustainability criteria added. For example, when it comes to biogenic content, that's not necessarily said that biogenic content is also sustainable content. But that is then, of course, open to different industrial sectors. Very quickly, our requirement for certification is a minimum substitution degree of 20%. The exact substitution degree will be pointed out in the certificate. So if a company goes well beyond the 20%, then of course that will be valued as well. 20%, as I mentioned, is the absolute minimum requirement. So before we come to labeling, let's take a very quick look at how the scheme operates in general. RedCert is applying the so-called neutral third-party inspection approach. That means that we have a division of power between the certification scheme, the economic operator, and the auditing party. RedCert, as the scheme owner, the certification scheme defines the requirement. Of course, we have a lot of input from different norms, standards, legislation, of course, our technical advisory board. But once the requirements are set, this will be factually binding to all scheme participants. And then on a second branch, we have the certification bodies. Certification body is trained and approved by RedCert and has professional auditors who will then perform an on-site inspection and issue the certificates for the economic operators. In turn, the certification body is also controlled and somewhat accredited or recognized by national authorities. This can be an accreditation body. In Germany, the Weltbundesamt, for example. And only once all of those requirements are met, certified products can be labeled as such. So as you can see, there's quite a lot happening behind the scenes to ensure the overall transparency and reliability and robustness of the system. After the certification, the company then receives so-called product certificates. As you can see here, that's a quite technical document. It's a nice PDF that states some characteristics of the material. There are some supported general advertisement claims, green claims, so to say. Of course, product ID, a link to the certification body that is responsible, the validity, product ID, and so on. And as you can see, that's already quite dry and too complicated for consumers. This is a B2B document. Instead, consumers would like to see a label. And what you can see here is the RedCert product seal that is currently used in the industry since 2018 on the left, or then here this smaller label on the right side. Looks a little bit like the Estonian flag. And I have also brought some practical examples. As you can see here, there is a lot of different approaches, even within our own scheme. There's a lot of online advertisement. There are some companies, like you can see on this paint bucket, that print a logo just strictly on the product. Then, of course, there is the additional, the new or the intermediate product seal, as you can see here on the left or on the right, even on quite messy products. And then, as you can see here in the middle especially, there are companies that are combining our certification approach with an additional certification scheme, like for this baby pacifier, where the silicone has been certified by RedCert and the hard plastic has been certified by ICC+. And then also there are companies that are combining the certification scheme seals and logos together with their own product descriptions, like as you can see here. So they are combining certified seals together with own tokens, which has been fine for the time being. But as you are, of course, all aware, the European Union is now updating, changing, reorganizing the legal background for sustainability declarations in the so-called Green Claims Directive. The reason is that a large number of false statements and wrong advertisement or exaggerations is circulating within Europe, which is then, of course, undermining the overall consumer confidence and trust in sustainability declarations in general. And the new regulation will provide a stable basis, as we hope, for green claims that isn't just based on consumer protection, but also based on technical correctness and certification of sustainability declarations. And based on this, of course, now our new product seal will be released. And here what you can see is the current draft version of our upcoming product seal update. We have a two-part structure. On the left, you see the actual seal, whereas on the right side, there is some kind of flag, quote unquote, with explanatory text. Different colors indicate different kinds of raw material. Here in red, we have recycled products. In green, we have biomass products. And in blue, we have general statements or materials that are considered sustainable for different reasons, such as, for example, electrolysis. The seal always mentions if a product is made using a mass balance approach or alternatively a segregation approach as a chain of custody. And the seal here within the text also gives the exact percentage of material that was saved or substituted. And I can personally assure you that the development of this new product seal was a real journey. We had, of course, our own content requirements. We went through several legal opinions. And of course, then we had to struggle with consumer protection because it's really not easy to have a factually correct statement, a quite technical statement that should be addressed to consumer in an understandable way. But in any case, now we hope that the new product seal will be usable very soon. Hopefully at the beginning of next year, everything will be finished. Last finishing touches are happening right now. And then hopefully we can get started in January. This is where the presentation ends. It was once again a great pleasure to be here today, and I'm very happy to answer any questions in the following.
So thank you very much. I would like to hand over to Philippe before we start the Q&A session. I would also like to make the people aware of our how we handle questions today, because there were several people coming later. So please put your questions in the Q&A box you see below, and please refer to the speaker with the @ symbol and the speaker's name, and then we can ask the questions on your behalf. So with this, I would like to hand over to Philippe. I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Okay, great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfectly.
Okay, so thank you very much for the organization and the invitation. And I would like to speak a bit about the role of certification body in the sustainability field, and but not only. And I will use some new certification scheme as a red line to explain what is behind the certification. So first of all, BioReCer is a certification body. It's what we call a testing, inspection, and certification body. And we are the Belgian branch office of BioReCer, and we are specialized in certification of bioplastic with several certification schemes and logo. As said by Simon, certification must be based on transparency. And so that's really important to have a clear process for the certification. And going from the application, and there is a need to have a clear contract between the applicant and the certification body, and to perform the necessary assessment to be sure that at the end, when we issue the certificate, the product or the process submitted to certification are well in line and complying with the relevant certification schemes and or standards. But certification is not a one-shot system, because once we have issued the certificate, there is a monitoring of the product on the market to be sure that the product that the consumer will find on the shelves are still complying with the certification scheme. And at the end of the certificate's life, it's possible to prolongate the certificate for a new 5 years, for example. certification body has different rules, and one of the first rule is to harmonize and clarify definition. And this is the case, for example, when we speak about renewable carbon, it's really important to well define what is exactly renewable carbon. And renewable carbon, according to the definition we set today, is carbon coming from biosphere, atmosphere, or technosphere, recycling, but not coming from geosphere. And that's a concept developed by the Renewable Carbon Initiative we are a member of. As said, we are a testing, inspection, and certification body. That means that we must base our assessment on facts. And the facts can be measurement, that's the testing, or inspection, based on the knowledge and experience and qualification of the inspector. He can give some conclusion and confirm the compliance with the rules or with the standard. And finally, we have the certification, which is indeed the extension of an image of the day of the inspection. We can then extend that assessment to the whole production or factory. Certifications body can also establish some protocol where they do not exist, and I will just give a few words about one of our scheme, OK Compost Home. And when we developed that scheme 20 years ago, there was no standards, and so we based our approach on the existing EN 13432 standard, but with lower temperature and longer delay. And not only that, but at the end, a few years ago, a few years later, sorry, that approach was used by several standardization bodies in Australia, in France, and even recently in Europe, as a base for a new standard for home compostable products. It's so important to be at the source of the standardization and legislation, and so that's why we are a member of several working groups for standardization, European or international one. But it's also really important to well understand that a standard is not a law. So it's always necessary to refer in the law to specific standards. The law will define the goals, and the standard will define the way to achieve that goal or to measure that goals. Certification body also clarifies communication. And so in the case of assessment, we can use several documents like testing reports and so far, but the testing report is sometimes very complex and very large document. It's not that sexy to read and to understand. And based on that, we will issue an assessment report. And the technical content is lower, but it's still quite difficult to understand. And the next step is to produce or to issue a certificate, which is much more easy to understand. But even for the, let's say, a Lambda citizen, it's not that easy. And the logo at the end is the way to translate complex technical matters in an easy to understand message. Once again, it's really important to well define the scope and the sector of a logo or a scheme. And for example, for end-of-life treatment, we have developed different certification schemes for OK Compost Home, OK Compost Industrial, but also for OK Biodegradable in soil, water, or in marine. As said, once we have issued the certificate, we will organize the market monitoring. And that means that we will check if the products on the market are still the same as the certified one. And We do that by taking samples on the market or checking the websites and hearing what is said on the market. And we will take some samples on the market or in the factories and search on internet as well. And for that, we have the support of a lot of partners. We have partners in more than 20 countries taking samples in their territory, but we have also the support of the policy. We have the support of the custom or some citizens sending us some samples, just asking us, are you sure this is okay with that product? And one of the most interesting way to get some samples and feedback from the market is our competitors. When a company is certified and active on a specific market, if there is another one coming on that market with a product, usually we receive, in the following days, we receive some samples just to check if the products are well certified and conform. And finally, what are the action? Can be withdrawal of the certificates in case of misleading information, of misuse of the logo. That can be also destroying the stocks or going to the courts in some cases. One of the tools we offer to our customers and the citizens and the authorities is we have an online database, and it's possible to search based on the code of the S code of the customer or the certificate number of the name of the producer or the manufacturer. It's possible to check online if the certificates are still valid. Finally, certification body is subjected to a very strict code of conduct, because it's really necessary that the customer, the consumer, the authorities trust in the certificates and the logos. And we are submitted to that kind of code of conduct to be sure that there is no issue with integrity, with data privacy, with confidentiality of information, but also with fair working condition, etc., etc. This code of conduct is available on our website as well. And finally, we participate to education. That's the reason why I'm here today, but also producing some documents to support the market and the education of the people. But certification body can also support and promote innovation, as for the Renewable Carbon Initiative launched in 2020, and that initiative is now that are about 80 companies member of the Renewable Carbon Initiative. And what is the idea behind that initiative is that it should be interesting to be able to communicate one global value of renewable carbon in a product, regardless the origin of that renewable carbon. Meaning that renewable carbon can come from the biomass or from the CO2 capture or from the recycling streams. And the idea was to develop a formula allowing to combine all these different origin sources of carbon. So together with the RCI, we developed a certification scheme to claim that global value, that global renewable carbon share. And I would like to take a few minutes to explain how a certification body develops a scheme. In this case, the first step was the selection of the underlying certification schemes. We first selected 9 underlying schemes. REDCER 2 is one of them, ICC Plus is another one, and Recyclas is also in the list. So all these schemes are well known and trusted. Once, once we have selected the underlying scheme, it was necessary to draft the scheme, our scheme, and well define the different concepts and ID, and for example, well define what is considered as renewable carbon and how to calculate it. And that was based on the formula developed by the Renewable Carbon Initiative, a specific working group working on that. And that's the basement indeed of our scheme. Then after we submitted the draft scheme to an advisory committee for first comment, and for example, to define how to communicate at the end to the end consumer. And the idea or the proposal was to have a kind of class approach with 5 levels, depending of the renewable carbon share in the product. Then we had to validate the scheme, and the idea was to launch it in last June, but we decided to fine-tune some aspect of the scheme to be sure that we cover everything and correctly, and we hope to be able to launch the scheme early in December, after the final advisory committee in 2 weeks. So depending the final decision of that advisory committee, it will be possible to launch the scheme in the next coming days then. So it was a bit short than expected, but thank you very much.
So thank you, everybody. Thanks to the speakers for the very nice presentations. And I saw that there are already a couple of questions. There is a question by Gunther Scholz. I will have to translate it. It's in German. Is there a European label for bio-based chemicals similar to the USDA BioReCer in the USA section intermediate? The background to this question is we would like to produce bio-based formic acid, and this is from the Oxford GmbH a request. So who would like to answer to this question?
If you want, I can, and I will share my last slide back. Indeed, there are two schemes, at least 2 schemes in Europe for bio-based. It's the OK bio-based we developed now 20 years ago. And there is the bio-based content scheme managed by the standardization organization in the Netherlands. And when we speak about bio-based, it's always a bit difficult because there are several concepts: bio-based carbon, bio-based content. But yes, there are similar schemes in Europe. One additional word, if I may, is that the USDA bio-preferred program is not exactly a certification scheme. It's a registration database that you put your lab report in the database, and you're registered in the database. But there is no, as I explained a few slides ago, there is no market monitoring as we do for a certification scheme like a bio-based.
Thank you. So next we have a question to Simon. Why are you not considering block and claim as chain of custody model?
So I think at some point you have to draw a line. And as we pointed out, certification is mostly about transparency. The major difference between a book and claim system and a mass balancing system, which we defined as a minimum requirement, is that a mass balancing system can still prove that the material that is in question is physically used on site. You may not exactly trace where exactly the sustainable atom ends up, but from a chemical standpoint, it doesn't make a difference if the biomethane and the natural methane molecule are now distinguished for chemical production. However, you still have the physical proof that by using the sustainable material on site, you are reducing the overall uptake of fossil materials. Whereas a book and claim system would allow you to take credit for a project that someone else has done entirely, or a project that is not connected to your material at all. And then, of course, also when it comes to book and claim, there are different kinds of book and claim systems. There are a lot of avoided claim avoided emission claims, where just by not destroying, for example, a habitat, you are quote unquote receiving some kind of credit, which then, of course, is, I think, the worst side of a book and claim approach. And then on the other hand, one could even say that, for example, the use of green electricity is somewhat like a book and claim system, because you are paying the producer of the green electricity, who is not directly connected to your company, to provide you the right to use their green electricity credits. So this is a somewhat in-between area for the electricity market. And obviously, RedCert doesn't require a company to have a second landline to use green electricity. So here we are, of course, also playing by the rules of that market, that particular market. But yeah, I think that's a quite lengthy and maybe not so strict answer. Not sure what to expect here.
Thank you very much. So I think if people are more interested in this topic, they can directly contact RedCert, I guess.
Yes, of course.
Okay, next there is a question to both of you. In our journey to support customers in achieving net zero, we now have products with measurable bio-based content. And for example, TÜV Austria, okay, bio-based certification. And those products are newly certified by RedCert for BMB. At both of you, do you have suggestions for effectively introducing these materials to the market with clear B2C logos and certifications? And the second question is, are you collaborating to develop a certification scheme for these materials?
I think the question was raised before my presentation, because it's the topic of the OK renewable carbon approach. Just to clarify, the idea behind OK renewable carbon is not to be based on existing certification scheme like RedCert, like ISCC+, and not to replace them. So we have a very good cooperation with Simon and with other scheme owners. And the idea is to combine all these schemes to offer one logo with one value to the consumers.
Thanks. And I think the next question was also before your presentation. You mentioned RedCert, in this case to Simon, you mentioned RedCert can be used to certify for biomass and recycled content. Can it also be used for using CO2?
Yeah, it is. It is. And once we have the green light from the advisory committee, we will release, of course, the certification scheme, and then everybody will be able to well understand what is behind and what is asked. Just coming back on the previous question, one of the issues is to be sure to not double count the the renewable carbon, if certified by two different certification bodies on two different ways, but covering the same part of the product. So that's of course one thing we have to take care.
I would like to add something because now we have been talking. So the question was about CO2, and we have been addressing CO2 as, for example, carbon capture material as a sustainable carbon source. But if the question was about GHG calculation, so GHG emission calculation, then I would like to add that we are also certifying a GHG footprint. However, there are several possibilities to do so. First of all, there is the, and yeah, let me actually share my screen again. So there are two different possibilities. First of all, you can use the requirements of the Renewable Energy Directive, which is the European legislation for the biofuel sector, which comes down with very strict requirements on GHG savings for the biofuels, and therefore also, of course, then has a calculation methodology. And then alternatively, you can follow relevant ISO norms like the carbon footprint LCA methodology, ISO 14067, which has a different approach that should theoretically come to the same conclusion, at least when it comes to a percentage saving in the end. However, those two approaches are not harmonized. REDcert will allow for carbon footprint calculation by either of those approaches, Renewable Energy Directive or carbon footprint. However, as a company, you then, of course, have to precisely state what you have been calculating, how you have been calculating, and yeah, also make sure that your customer understands exactly what you have been doing. So just want to mention it here. We are not really focusing on GHG calculation. This is something that we also offer. But I think the major point is to use renewable materials.
So I don't see Anke for a minute, then I would state the next question, which is, can you explain what went wrong in the Chinese biodiesel scandal from the certification standpoint and what to take away from that experience?
So for anyone who's not familiar with what happened there is this was part of the renewable fuel sector. There was some fraud case of Chinese biodiesel that was imported. I would like to point out that it was not REDcert certified material that was wrongly imported. So the fraud case is outside of our scheme and also outside of the TÜV Austria scheme, as far as I know. So of course, from our standpoint, it's hard to judge what went wrong. But some control mechanism didn't function as it was supposed to. But you would have to address another certification scheme that is responsible or was responsible for those certificates.
Thank you, Simon. And the next question is also relating to you. Your scheme is very elaborate, says one of the participants. You mentioned REDcert has taken measures to reduce the cost for smaller enterprises. Can you give some indications of the level of costs?
This is, of course, very hard because, as I mentioned, there is the three-party system. That means that there is a contract with REDcert and there is a contract with the certification body. And our fee schedule is publicly available, so you can directly scan how much a REDcert scheme participant would pay. And this is based on the overall turnover of the company. This is based on the overall number of certified operating sites and also based on the material that is traded, of course, only the sustainable material. But then on top, there comes costs of the audit. And this is completely reliant on the certification body. And of course, you have to factor in things like travel time. And if an audit is extremely complex and specially trained experts have to take part in the audit and it takes several days, then of course, this will also be reflected here. And since we as the certification scheme have no insight in the internal cost structure of the certification body, I cannot answer this question.
Thank you for elaborating. And the next question is by Joe Evans to Philippe. What is the expected timeline for the TÜV Austria renewable carbon certification?
So I said we expect to launch it in December. Yeah, for the certification itself, it will depend, of course, of the if the file is completed, because if we need additional information or if some parts of the product are not covered by an underlying scheme, then it will take a bit more time, but it's a question of weeks.
And the next question is also for Simon, but I think it actually refers to both of you as certification holders. It's in the chat. Do you expect the need for claim and logo adjustment once the final version of the EU Green Claims Directive is available?
Do you mean claims and logos that are currently used, or do you mean the claim and logo that we are currently developing?
I assume it's referring to the logos you are using currently. Yes.
Yeah. So it's hard to judge. It is actually the EU Green Claims Directive, I think, is not really an issue for certified companies because it tries to strengthen the overall certification sector. It tries to battle non-certified and non-fundamental green claims. So actually from the certification standpoint, the Green Claims Directive is a really good thing because it provides us with a fundament, a legal fundament that also backs up our certification. However, depending on what exactly you are communicating, it might be more of a problem with it when it comes to consumer protection laws, because a lot of the statements that are certified are factually correct, but they are so technical that a private person not necessarily understands what is communicated. And therefore, I think what we will see in the future is a lot of links to websites and QR codes and so on, and additional explanations, maybe even on the packaging itself, to provide context for consumers.
Would you like to add anything, Philippe?
Yeah, I fully agree with Simon. Normally, there is no big risk for existing certification schemes if they are based on measurements, on inspection, certification, on facts indeed, as I said during my presentation. Maybe it will be necessary to make some fine-tuning about some aspects, but mainly we are more in favor of that kind of directive, of course. It's cleaning the market. It's just to avoid people saying my product are renewable with a nice logo developed in-house and without any check or any facts behind.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think we would like to conclude just in time. Thanks to both speakers. Thanks to all participants. And once more, the reminder and invitation to join our next webinar episode on December 13th. It's a Friday from 1 till 2 p.m. No, from 12 o'clock till 1 p.m. Correct, Anke? Thank you, everyone. And the materials will be made available on both project websites. Hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone.